I'm sure he needs no introduction, however I will. There's Peter Consterdine Sensei, 9th Dan, and originally says you Shitaru, yes, but now much more like founder of the British Combat Karate Association.
No, originally Wado.
Scott. Oh, Wado. Okay.
Yeah, originally Wado. I was first done in Wado, so probably the first 4 years or so. But I'll run through the history for people. I want to keep this quite informal, so I'm not doing any big formal bows or anything like that, not dressed for it. So as I just explained to Scott, well, I just say good afternoon to everybody. It's really good to be here. I've been linking in with Scott over the last sort of 18 months or so, and some of the guys are going to be coming over, do some training here. This is our central dojo for the British Combat Association. It's run by my training partner, Peter Laking, and it's actually the British Combat Academy that the BCAs are for here. And the guys coming over, of course, got stopped with the COVID. And we're just about opening up again here. We can have junior classes at the moment. And about the 17th of May, we can get adult classes going again. So what I wanted to do, first of all, probably for those of you who are not that familiar, give you a bit of my background. I'm waiting for Peter to turn up. He's got caught with a family issue because we're going to work together. But if I can start on the bag and show you some double hit. My karate journey started in 1964, which is about 57 years ago, if the maths is anything as it should be. And I started in Wado in Manchester. And that was for about the first 4 years or so. I was first down in Wado, and it was that time that I was first on the Great Britain and England karate teams. And in those days, it was an all styles. Not that there were that many styles, and not that there were that many participants anyway, otherwise I wouldn't have got on the Great Britain and England teams. It was a Premier League of one club, really. So that was about 8 years or so on the Great Britain and England squads. And then in around 68 or 69, we'd lost our link in what was the British Karate Association, which is still going, run by a friend of mine. We'd lost our Japanese links with Sensei Suzuki, Shimizu, and others. And the old BKA was breaking up, and the northern clubs actually made a move to the Shukokai. I'll just have to keep moving around because the lights are on a switch here, so just let me get them. So we made a move to the Shukokai. So the northern BKA clubs moved to Shukokai, which was run by Sensei Tani and Sensei Kimura. And that for me was a burning bush moment, because all of a sudden I had Japanese who were not like we'd been used to, where wouldn't answer questions. We were having to copy people. There was never any breakdown or instruction as to why we were doing certain things. We just did what they did. And it dawned on me later on why they'd never answer questions. It was principally because they didn't speak English. And it sort of dawned on me later on that that stoical Japanese approach to delivering karate was simply a language barrier. But what we'd end up doing, we ended up teaching the same way. So we wouldn't answer questions. And it just became quite banal, really. It was very strange. If you link that with any other sport or pastime, it would never happen. But in 69, when we changed to Shukokai and formed the Shukokai Karate Union over here in the UK, as I say, that was a burning bush moment for me, because I had Sensei Kimura became our chief instructor here in the UK. And it was through him that we started to incorporate different dynamics into what was still then traditional karate. Over the years, I've taken that, kept it in karate, kept it in freestyle, kept it in full contact, kept it in kickboxing, and incorporated other things. But predominantly it's karate. But what I wanted to go over today, things like the double hip, you'll have heard about the principles of that. I want to deal with counter rotation, want to deal with kick shot, and overlapping transitions as well. So that was 1969, we changed over, still on the Great Britain team and England teams. I think the last Europeans I fought in for England were about 1974. I've fought full contact. I was British middleweight full contact champion going back just slightly after that. And my work, apart from running the associations, which is the British Combat Association, British Combat Karate Association, and the World Combat Association, and Ian Abernethy is the sort of chief instructor of the WCA, the World Combat Association. My other work has always been on the security side of the fence. So for 28-ish years, I worked all over the world doing close protection work for big North American corporations. And I'm still very much involved in that risk and security side of things. So let's just talk about, so first of all, I'll keep the questions going as we go along, guys. I don't want to wait till the end in case it's something that anybody wants to just pick up on. So anybody at this point got any specific questions on what they've heard about the double hip or other dynamics?
Well, from my point of view, Sensei, I just really want to see you demonstrate it.
Yeah. So one of the, if we think about, and this is how it was always presented to us by Kimura, if you think about, by analogy with any other sport, where we want a dynamic effect, a ballistic effect with, say, this hand, there's no other sport that links the hip, the shoulder and the hand at the same time. So if we think about turning the hip, being in Zenkuts, doing a gaku, so we're going to be turning the hip and we're turning the hand and the shoulder at the same time. Pretty much. These days, there's a push of the hip first of all. People have started to incorporate that, but that's only half the story. So there's no other sport, by analogy with that, that would link those together. So if you think the very simple thing about throwing a stone, the first thing you have to do, you shake the hand and relax it. It's never caught up here and tense. And the hand would go backwards first of all, and I'll just tuck this in so you can see the hip better. So the hand would go back, but so would the hip. So the hand would be thrown back, the hip would go forward, and it would leave the hand behind and create torque or recoil in this shoulder here, and then the stone would go. So those of you who play golf, there's if you're familiar with golf, there's a guy at the moment called DeChambeau. He's the big hitter in golf. He has a massive swing. And there was an article, a visual photograph, it was only 3 photographs, article in a paper a couple of weeks ago. And they were talking about, as if it was some miracle, that what he did when he took the golf swing, and they said, as he's swinging back, he's now moving the bottom half forward. And they're calling it the lag. By the lag meaning he's got this lag between this part coming down and this part going forward. It's a double hit. Okay. So if you think about a shot put, so I have a big heavy shot here. Now I can't go like this quickly. It's impossible to do it. So what happens is, and I know now some of them spin around the circle, but for a lot of the old shot put, is this, as they move across the circle, this hit comes and the hollow back starts to take effect. And what happens is we transfer the body weight to the shot. So as this starts to go here, we want to break this heavyweight inertia. Same with the tennis serve, ball goes up, hip goes forward. Now the classic example is a javelin. So if you think of a javelin, the girl's throwing it down, runs down the runway, gets this arch, and it is this what we call a C shape, call it in that. The last thing to go is the javelin, the last thing to go. When this arm is completely stretched and we've transferred the body weight with this. Where we have the problem is we want this, which is our tool, to get to the target too quickly. Now we can get this to the target, don't quote me, I'm just making a figure up. We could get that fist to the target at 100 miles an hour. What we can't get to the target at 100 miles an hour is our body. And that's where the impact is. So by analogy again, think of a hill. We've got a stone wall at the bottom of it, and it's 4 courses thick of brick. It's absolutely solid. We send a mini down the hill at 100 miles an hour, hits the brick wall, shatters in pieces. Brick wall's got a few pieces of brick in it. We send a 15-ton Arctic down the hill. It doesn't stop, demolishes the wall, carries on, can't find the wall, truck's hardly damaged. And that's what we want to try and get into a strike. We don't want the strike to be like the mini. We want to have the 15-ton behind it. And that's our body weight. And that's what the double hit does. it transfers the body weight into the technique. So I'll give you a sort of phrase, if you like: speed steals impact. Speed steals impact. The faster we try and move something, the arm on its own, or the kick on its own, or the head on its own, or the shoulder if we're hitting with the shoulder, the faster we try and do that, the more we invoke white twitch muscle fibers, and we're not getting the body weight into it. So basically the double hip, and if I turn this way here, and I want to talk about the pivot point now. Sorry guys, just let me get this slide back on again. It takes a walk round. So if we think about a pivot point where we're in Zen cuts, and if I have a rod going down my head, coming out my backside, pretty much in the middle. And what happens is when we do Zen cuts, when we throw that, is this hip breaks. This hip breaks back here. Now, if you think about what I've got is a central axis. And if you equate that to, say, a revolving door that you're all familiar with in a hotel or an office block, that revolving door is on a central axis. And if I pushed it with, say, 50 pounds on one side, 50 pound will come back the other. And that's what happens when we punch here on the central axis. If I put 50 pound here, I've got 50 pound going out of this back shoulder, particularly when I've got the pullback, okay? So what I want to do is change the hinge. The double hip changes the hinge from a central axis to just the lead hip here. So it changes it to a single door. Like you see in your own homes, you've got a door, it's got 3 hinges, and I want the hinge to be a knee, a hip, and a shoulder, okay? So the double hip, when we start, and I'm going to do this from just an easy upright stance, because I want to just show you about this straight hip here, okay? We'd still do it from Zen cuts, but at the moment, I want to keep the stance a bit shorter. So from here, we're going to do a whipping action back as if we're throwing a stone. So we whip this back, but at the same time, we move the weight forward onto the front leg and create this hinge in this side. Now this side doesn't come back. The other side now goes forward. So I'm walking my body weight to this hinge and then rotating it to create this recoil here. So if you give me a second, I'll get a glove on and just show you all this. Now, I have to exclude these gloves. These are my best gloves. They double up as a chamois leather to do the car with. So just turn this slightly so you can see that bag. So again, if you look at this, I'm taking the time to work this hip backwards and forwards. That foot locks on the front, knee pretty much we try to lock it forward, and this hip goes backwards and forwards. And if you notice when it does that, like I'm throwing a stone, this one comes back here. But what I want to make you realize, understand first of all this is just the ABC. So don't look at this and say, that's not going to work tactically, it's too slow, everybody would see it. Let me tell you, we can do it at 5,000 miles an hour and still get the double hit. So don't think that this isn't practical or it's not tactical, okay? You'll see this later when we start to build some speed up into it. So from here, we're getting this recoil. The hand to practice this is relaxed. One of the reasons I put the glove on, one is because it's protected when we hit with the impact, but two, it makes me think about having, say, a big steel glove. So this hand, I visualize as weighing 20 or 30 pounds. So I can't just whack it quickly. Okay, I can't just bang this in. Okay. So what I've got to think about is I'm going to have to use my body to start to rotate this and start to drag this forward. Now I've got that C shape. And then from here, just easy. These are full heavy bags. And the beauty of a double hip effortless. So it just takes that 1, 2, recoil, 3. And what I'm trying not to do is let this side come back. I end up with a central pivot. Just at that point, any questions?
Yes, Sensei. So when you're doing that, you're going for that lag, like you were talking about the golfer, yeah?
Yeah.
And so that lag, is that ever? Are you trying to maximize that as well when you're doing the kind of the ABC of it? The
Yeah.
kind of basic. So are you trying to maximize that lag as well?
Yeah. Yeah, very much. So what I'm trying to do is think of this. I'm not holding it here, Scott, because the moment that we obviously tactically we can do this from anywhere. We could do a double hit from here, we could do it from here, we could do it from here. Makes no difference. What I'm trying to do when I'm practicing is make sure I'm relaxed with this and that it's heavy and my body is trying to get this to get a bit of a swing. So if you notice, it's coming up at the back, and when it gets level with the target, I've built up this huge recoil in the shoulder. This is why in the old days, all Shukokai guys had sort of rotator cuff problems, because we're getting this big lag in the shoulder here. Okay. So we're getting this lag, 1, 2. So the cadence is 1, 2, 3. But I'm walking my weight. So let's say there's a cut, my balance is in the middle. But as I do the double, I'm moving my front foot onto that. I'm moving my weight onto the front leg. And then my pivot point is this opposite hip. This now recoils, so you can see that pull in the shoulder. Then this hits. You okay? Yeah.
Sensei, it's Andy Bailey from Newton Aycliffe PCKA Club. When you're doing that, I noticed that you've got no weight at all in that back leg, so you're not pushing off that back leg at all. You're sinking all your weight into that front and like dropping. Perfect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, well spotted. So again, let's look at by analogy with any other sport. Let's say if I said to a tennis player, I'm going to teach, I said to a tennis player, I'm going to teach you to do a serve like karate people do it. But what I want to make sure happens is you lock your back leg on the floor. And he'd go, what? We've locked my back leg. How am I going to get my weight going forward? How am I going to get power into that strike? So, you know, I've always said, if I was, let's say I was just a foot soldier in the 1600s in Japan, and I've got this big battle, and they've given me a pike, and I know that the opposing army have got big horses, and they're going to be charging down at me. Let me tell you, I'm going to lock that back leg in. That's it. When I want to take the weight forward, no, that heel has to come up. Sorry, guys, 1 sec. I'm going to get the thing going again. So that heel has to come up. Okay, and it's not prejudicing you at all to bring the heel up at the back, because if you think about it, how on earth? No other sport. Think of a javelin. Javelin, when they get to the end, don't lock themselves. The weight has to come here to allow the body weight to transfer with this whipping action into the throw. Okay.
Thank you. Is there any chance of like going off balance with that as well?
Yeah, let me talk about balance. This is a myth. So we hit harder with no feet on the floor than 90% of people in the karate world hit with both feet on the floor. Okay. We hit harder with no feet on the floor. Balance, there's no such thing as being unbalanced if you intend to be there. So we'll do techniques where people will say, you're off balance. No, I intended to be there. I intended to get that commitment. I intended to move this way and take my weight one side forward or everything forward. Or if somebody's coming at me, what we do is we skip. We'll skip this front foot into it, pretty much into the crash. But then we transfer this over the top to a strike, okay? So we're only unbalanced if we're someplace we didn't intend to be. But balance is a choice. There's no fixed thing. And I think one of the problems with balance, we think because when I started, there was no videos about karate, you couldn't find any. It was all magazines. Magazines have a photographic fixed point in time. So when you looked at the early 1900s, late 1800s, we looked at the Japanese doing things, we see a stance, we get, oh, we must stay in that stance, we're fixed in it. Stances are transitional. They happen for split seconds, and then we're on to something else. So there's all that transition, you would say, you're off balance when you're transitioning from a stance. So if you think of any other sport that wants something going forward that locks its heel in at the back, you won't find it. Javelin, shot put, anything. It lets it rise up. Can you take a pad?
And Sensei, can I just ask? I mean, I maybe
Yes.
you'll be moving on to this anyway through the class. But so with this, is there a kind of an ideal distance, or would you get, when you get closer to someone and much more closer stuff, would you still be using similar principles, or is this kind of like a distance kind of?
Yeah. This is Peter. Hi guys. So this is just show you against this. Peter's thick end of 20 stone. My training partner for over 20 years. So just, I want you just to hear the thump on this. This distance. Okay, this distance, hip, long distance, bad balance, same double hip. Okay, Scott, does that?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's great. So basically, what you're doing is you're just kind of like space distance gives you more time. Is that what you're doing? You've got more time to, and then you're just kind of condensing it down and down and down.
That's what we've got to think about. The more distance you've got, the more your technique can accelerate. So a short distance, you haven't got time for it to accelerate. Now, we get good karate people here, but once you get them moving and trying to hit things, it becomes all arm. The ability to move and get impact through body weight into it. All I'm trying to get here is body weight. If I get an elbow, we'll do elbow in a short while. If I want an elbow on, or a head or a shoulder, I have to get body weight here. Otherwise, it's just the weight of this arm and a bit of central rotation. But with central rotation, you've got it going out the back, okay? So you're quite right. The longer the distance, the more you have to let the speed build up. But you can still be fast. One of the myths about speed in punching, guys, is if you want speed in punching, it's not. Don't think about the speed going out. That won't work for you. Speed in punching is how fast you're going to bring it back, okay? You still need, depending on what you're doing, if it's points, that's fine. You can just touch or just control it. You can still get weight in a fast punch. But what you want to think about a fast punch, and I'll do this in a short while when we get the pads out, what you have to think about is if you have, let's say, a tea towel or a whip, and I've got this whip, and I whip it out as fast as I can and leave it there. The whip at the end just flops around, okay? The impact from the whip is not the going out, it's what? It's that whipping back, okay? So the whipping back is important. And we use that tactically when we're fighting. So if we want to get speed up, we get this whip in, that fools them, and then we're using that pull back here. So one of the principles, and I'll show you in a short while, if we're doing a combination, there's no end point to one of the techniques in that combination. We steal the end of a combination, we steal the end of a technique for the start of the next one. We try to avoid that schoolboy. So if, let's say, we've got a combination with 5 things in it, 5 techniques, okay, we're not separating those. The end of one will give us the start of the other. And I'll show you that. That's what we call overlapping transitions. And I'll show you that with Peter in a short while. Okay, so, so any other points on that?
Sensei.
He's just set his twins down, then he's going to come back and I can whack him again.
Sensei, one question.
Yeah.
Do you,
Yep.
does your hip, with the lag, even though it starts before the punch, does it finish with the punch at the same time?
No, it's finished before.
Before.
Yeah, so effectively, another sort of statement, if you can bear this in mind, what I do is hit them with the body before I hit them with the tool. So the hip has finished. So from here, if I'm just going in 1, 2, 1, 2, even if I keep the hand here, which I don't want to do a lot, but I can do, when I do that 1, 2, you see how that now is stretching this shoulder. And this is going to fire this hand forward. But if you look, 1, 2, so I'll give you the cadence, and the cadence is the beat. So it's not 1, 2, 3. It's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So I'll just link this quickly before Pete's ready. I'll just link this to another concept, which is counter rotation. Okay. So the concept of counter rotation we use for a few things, but principally kicking. Okay. So again, we're going to be using counter rotation to steal the end of something as the start of the next thing. Okay. So for a moment, if we just think about counter rotation, just imagine, you don't have to imagine because we've all got it. We have 2 hemispheres in our body. The top hemisphere, and then we've got the sort of bottom hemisphere below our middle here. And at some point in the middle of us, there's a ball joint, okay? So we've got a ball joint. Now, everything we do in our body works opposite. The 2 hemispheres work exactly in opposition to each other. So if we think about, dead simple thing, when we walk, we don't walk with the hand, we walk in opposition. So this works oppositely. And now if I want to sprint, I don't just move my feet quicker, I move my hands quicker. So my hands will go quicker to help me sprint, okay? Think about my Mac is on a swivel chair. It's on a bar stool swivel chair. So if I took the computer office and sat on it and lifted my feet off the floor, can I turn around in the chair? It's a question. So anybody pipe up? Yeah, you're doing it. So what you know is, and those of you who've worked in an office with about 6 hours to spare in a day, and you've been given a swivel chair, spend all day turning yourself around by pulling your hands in opposite direction to where the bottom half of your body is. So as I do this, this bottom half turns. So if you think about how we run to give impetus to our legs, why don't we do it with kicking? Because we should. So when we kick, we use the top half of our body. We don't kick with our legs. Okay. Sounds a silly statement. We kick with our hands. Okay. We kick with our hands because our hands give us the impetus for the body weight to go into, say, a roundhouse. We're turning this in. But that will work off strikes that we might have done before, okay, which I'll come on to in a minute. So I want to just take the same double hip. It doesn't just work with the rear hand. It will work with the lead as well to give us. We get boxers coming up to train with us who've got superb jabs, but pretty much there's not a lot in them, okay? They use the jab tactically to create distance, to sort of, you know, wear people down over a period. We want one strike to do it, nothing else, one strike. That's what I started martial arts for 57 years ago. I wanted one hit, okay? But I didn't get it then with the traditional as it was, okay? So, Pete, are you all right for 1 second, or? Yeah, let's try it. He's got two twins in the corner. They're in the cage at the moment. So here's just the double again. That's a square. So here's the double with the reverse, with the gaku. So, and what I'm doing as well is, guys, I'm punching with my fist this way, slightly turned over, not this. And I'll come on to white tactically in a short while. So this is the double. Now think about this now with the lead hand. So think of it now with the lead hand. How can I use a double hit for that? Just the opposite. So now this hip, the opposite hip, leads in, locks to here, and this hip now comes forward and gives and then we can get the roll 1, 2. So here, okay, so this rolls 1, 2, so it's continuous. Any questions?
So Sensei, are you're deliberately kind of leaning in as well, yeah? Like when that front hand was going in, like you're going from a kind of like upright position, and on the point of impact, you're kind of leaning into maximum body mass in, yeah?
It might look like it's a lean at the top, but it shouldn't be. It's just this here moves forward.
Yeah.
So I'm wanting to keep my body walking forward into that.
Okay.
So I can, don't forget at any one time, and this comes back to the back foot. So I can hit with this, with my weight, but then sink back. Okay? So I can hit with this, sink back and draw the foot in. I'm in command of my feet. Okay? If you think of your back foot needs to be locked in all the time, your foot's in command of you. It's dead simple. Okay? You need to command your feet. Go where you want them to go. Okay? So if you think about any Japanese sensei that you're familiar with in the Shotokan environment or anything else, any from Okinawa, so what they finished, say, in 1920 or 1930 or 1940, if those guys had lived 100 years, what they do now would look nothing like they were doing then. Because what they were doing then looked nothing like what was happening 20 years before that. They would develop. They would look at other things. They'd suddenly come to some conclusions about things, empirically or through experience or whatever, or research. So it would change. It doesn't alter the fundamental principles of the style that you're doing. But certain things you have to think, is that adding value to what I want? Now, depends what you want. So if you think about the aesthetics of karate, which is still really important, we test everything we do. We challenge everything with speed, impact, and aesthetics. We want it to look right. But what I don't want it to do is look right, but nothing in it. I don't want it to be an empty box. And I always use the sort of joke about, I give somebody a present and it's a box at Christmas and it's really well wrapped. So it's beautiful. It's got gold paper. It's got a bow on. It's got the name on it. So they open it and there's nothing in it. They say, what's the present? So it's the box. It's really a nice box. It looks lovely. And they say, yeah, but I could have done with a present. That's what modern karate can be like if we're not careful. And modern kata competition has ended up that way. Beautifully aesthetic, fast, sharp, precise. There's nothing in it. It's not got content. Okay, it's the box. You've got the shape. So we want the shape, but we want impact. We want that content in it as well. Okay. So any points on that?
So Sensei, you don't let your whole body move forward on the punch, so that as you're going in, allowing that extra momentum forward in the punch, you're actually controlling the punch a bit more.
With what? Sorry, with the
So if you're punching, you're like the javelin thrower would throw and then they will go forward, whereas you're not going forward on the punch, using that momentum, still going forward.
Yeah, no, we use, if Pete can settle him down, we'll get on the pads. We use that. Once that momentum starts, if we're attacking, that momentum carries on. Because at the end of each technique, I'm at the point of my weight going over that foot. So if I punch here, so if I do a double and punch here, my weight's just wanting to go over. Now, if I intend to go forward and make something of that, then I'm going to use that momentum, okay? Whereas if I'm a bit cautious and I throw this one in, my weight's coming right to the very end, but I'm able just to take it back. So I can just create that distance for a counter strike, okay? So one of the things we talked about was overlapping transitions, okay? So overlapping transitions is, think about, if you've got a combination, think about the end of every technique that you're doing in the combination. What can we steal from that we can use for the next technique we're doing? Okay? And if we think about a gaku to a roundhouse, okay? So we're going to do a reverse punch to a roundhouse. Thinking about what I said about the counter rotation. So, try and get Pete back in while we do this on the pads. But if you think about, I'm here and I throw a gaku, so I'm going to want to do with this guy, I'm going to want to throw a gaku and then a roundhouse. And classically what happens is, I throw a gaku, I get myself ready for the roundhouse and he counters with a lead hand, okay? Because I've given him a gap. He's got that gap he can insert himself in, particularly if you've seen me do it before, say, a punch and then a kick, okay? So what we want to do when we punch is leave it here. We leave it there, okay? We get boxers and we just mess around and we punch. We'll leave our hand there. And if we leave our hand on gloves, they won't move the hands. They'll keep it here because the glove's here, okay? And then under cover of darkness, we'll be doing something that's going to be the next thing, okay? In this case, it's going to be a right roundhouse. So what I'm now going to do, can be a lead kick. What I'm now going to do, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to grab a handle in the air. I'm going to grab a handle in the air and I'm going to pull this handle back. And what's it doing at the bottom half? It's now counter rotating. It's counter working this roundhouse kick. So this goes one and then two. So it's one, pulls back, two, and then at the end here, I've got this turn. So my hands turn. What that does as well, it gives me a guard in the front. So as I turn here, this comes up, turn, pull in. This comes as a guard here, this comes here. But I'm upright, so we can kick high, we can get the shape, but the impact is with this pull, which is rotating the hips. It's not just the leg and then a flick from the bottom half from the knee, okay? So this goes in, grab the handle, pull to here, counter rotation, and then I can come down and I'm square. On the way down, I can hit hands and I come down, or I can go back, okay? So just any question on that, and I'll try and get Pete and we'll do it on the pads.
Sensei, it's not necessarily about that. This is amazing, by the way. It's I'm interested to know a bit about your breath. I was observing your breath when you was striking the pad just now. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I'm sorry, it's just breaking up on my end. I'm awfully sorry. Say again, please.
I was just asking if you could talk a little bit about your breath when you were breathing, when you were striking.
Yeah. Yeah, I breathe. I've always, yeah, I've got a thing, the internet connection isn't stable. No, honestly, I don't even constantly think about the breathing, okay? I don't, I do have an exhalation of the air at the end of a technique, but I'm not consciously doing it. You might hear a sort of hitting sound I do when, you know, I'm building up to something. That's just, it's almost keeping me more relaxed than anything else. And eventually, once we, and I'll talk about fitness training in a short while as well. Just in a second, Pete, will you? Yeah. So first of all, before we do the combination of the two, I need to walk around. Yeah, Pete's walking. There's more of Pete, the lights come on quicker. So we'll just do the reverse punch again, this time to a pad. So we don't do the pad like boxers do the pad, where, you know, as they work on a pad, the pad man, I never know whether the pad man's hitting harder than the boxer is, because they're doing this. The pad man might as well go in the ring, he's hitting probably as hard. So we keep it just as solid as we can. So this time from here, so you hear that weight at the end of it. So this time from here, I'm going to do 1, then 2. So this time I'm going to hit, and then here is. So I'm not doing, if we didn't go out of vision, I'm afraid, I'm not doing 1, 2. It's 1, 2. Okay? That'll be fine for the moment. Sorry. Any questions?
So Sensei, just a quick question. When you're throwing that punch, is there a kind of a rounding of your shoulder, or are you? I know you're stretching it, and then from that stretch, as you let the punch fly, are you
Yep.
allowing the shoulder to come straight, or are you coming round and over, or what's your feeling there?
No, it's straight. No, it's straight. And it doesn't turn. Why do we think in reality we wouldn't want it to turn? There's 2 reasons.
Are you disengaging your lat a little bit when you're rotating fully?
No, so think about the reality. You've always got to look at everything we do and say, in reality, what's going to happen with this? So here's how we form a fist. You know it. Straight down here, 90 degrees here. That's fine. So I'm punching somebody who's 5 foot tall. That'll work. Now I'll just come down here. Now I'm punching somebody who's 6.5 foot tall. What of my knuckles are going to hit first? It's not these.
It's just bottom 2, the bottom ones.
The bottom. It's this next line. It's just going to shatter my hand. So I think, okay, what I'll do is I'll turn my wrist over. Now what's going to happen? Wrist is going to break. But turn your fist this way and turn it over. And now it's solid, versatile, and I can get these knuckles on. Okay? That's the reality of how you would punch in the street. The other thing, we see it all the time, and it's just a trait, it's a poor trait. So you do it, and what happens is this elbow comes out. Now, if you think about actually fighting and think about human perception, we're bad at range finding. Okay? Human beings, we're bad at finding. Our eyes are close together. So it's difficult for us to tell. We have poor depth perception. It's difficult for us to tell something that's coming towards us, what distance that's at, unless there's any lateral movement. So always used to say, when you're moving forward, let's say Oitsuki, and we can do Oitsuki in a minute because I want to deal with Kickshot. He used to say, when you move forward, you're in a metal corridor. It's metal at the top, it's metal at the sides. You have an inch on either side. As you move forward, if you go up, you'll be electrocuted. If you move to one side or your elbow comes out, you'll be electrocuted. So, because if you move down that corridor with no lateral or vertical perception of movement, the person finds it difficult to judge where you are, okay? And we get people who start to punch and elbow's coming out. That's what people will see. They won't react to the fist. The fist can just be here. So from here, bang, it's there. They won't react to it. It's on them. But what they pick up is this. So with the fist in this pistol type grip shape, the elbow never comes out. But what I have at the end of it, so I'm not perfectly like this. I'm slightly off when I finish. I'm just at that 45 to get those first two knuckles on. Okay. So there's a tactical consideration and there's a practical consideration in what knuckles will hit in a traditional punch when you've got somebody who's much taller than you're reaching up for. Okay. So the body, it makes no difference. You know, it's soft, you can sink it in, whatever shape you've got. Okay. Does that answer the question? Might not answer it to anybody's satisfaction. I've answered the question.
So to come back to the breath thing, may have been my my video, but I was hearing an intake of breath from you when you started your punch.
No, it was the outflow of breath. Yeah. So it's the outflow when I'm going in. Yeah. Anything else just on that? Nope. So let's just deal with another principle, which is Kickshot. So let me just bring this down a bit so you can see my feet. Okay. Hopefully the camera will pick it up. Can you see that? Because I've got a blurred.
Yeah, it's a little bit blurred, Sensei. A little bit blurred.
Yeah. For some reason, I think it might be the internet connection.
Maybe if you just put your hand to the camera, it'll force it to refocus.
Yeah.
It's okay, we can see you.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, so just tilt it down again so you can just catch the feet. Sorry about this, I can see it myself and it's unclear. But so let's say now, think about traditional where you want to move forward. Okay, so you balance 50-50. What's the principle? If I'm balanced 50-50, what's the first thing I have to do? If I want to now move forward.
Shift your weight onto your front foot.
Yeah, okay. So I'm 50-50. So the first thing I'm going to have to do, sorry guys, just let me get this again. So it's on sensors for a time. Oh, video's cleared. So I have to move here. That's a tell. That's a tell immediately. When that weight moves, that's a tell, okay? What we're after is using Newton's third law of motion, which is what? For every action,
there's an equal and opposite reaction.
It is. That's Newton's third law of motion. Okay. So the floor isn't for standing on. The floor for us is a runner's starting block. Okay. That's how we use the floor. So if we do a technique where we might hit the floor, say on a lead hand, we don't waste that hit because Newton's third law, and I know it's a strange concept, Newton's third law says when I put pressure on the floor presses me back. That is the concept of Newton's third law. It's not a bounce, the floor actually presses my foot back. So if I hit the floor, we use that kick shock to lift the leg for a kick, for a lead kick. Because normally with any kick, what we end up fighting with a kick, most of the effort goes on fighting what? If we're having to lift a heavy leg, what's most of the weight, what's most of our effort going into?
Fighting gravity?
Correct. Probably 60–70% of what we put into a kick is actually the lifting part of it. So if we can do something where we can use Newton's third law to give us that kick shock after we've done something, say a lead hand, and we impact on the floor and bounce up, we've got the knee probably at a waist height just with recoil, not with having to lift with the muscles. Okay, the same when we want to do, say, oitsuki from here. Okay, we're going to use kick shock, and that's on the back foot. So we're going to get a recoil from this back foot into the heel to kick us forward. But it's in combination with something else, and that's the lead foot. So what we do when we want to do kick shock and move forward explosively, we put pressure both ways. So I'm here, I'm just moving lightly, it doesn't look like anything's happening, but every time I go down, I'm putting pressure both ways. The back pressure gives me the recoil, the front pressure gives me a landslip. So if you think about where we have an earthquake, it's the buildup of pressure between two fault zones that eventually slips. And that's what we want the front foot to do. We want it as we do this to slip. So from here, as I put pressure here, it slips and then I'm going on the oitsuki. Okay, sorry. So from here, just this way, kick shot, then I'm forward onto this. Okay, and then I'd be using that as I hit the floor. This would come up for a kick, possibly if that was tactically something I want to do. So the kick shock is critical. We use it for all sorts of things. Okay, so we've got pressure on the front, I kick down, this slips, and then this is going. Okay, so there's no perception of moving the weight to break the balance. I don't want to give a tell to my opponent in moving the weight forward. It just explodes and I go. It explodes and I go. From here, explodes and I go. Any questions?
So Sensei, just to clarify that, that slippage that you're talking about. So as you're putting your pressure down,
yep,
is driving you forward, and you're allowing your front foot to slide in.
Yep, yep.
And then
the pressure on the front foot is going forward, not down. So my front foot is wanting to slip forward, and then I let it. At the same time, I hit the back foot with the recoil. My front foot, I don't have to let the front foot slip. It's purely distance. So if I want to do this over 12 feet or 14 feet, then the front foot's important because I need to have that point. I need to gain some distance on that front foot, first of all, that I'm going to go over the top of. Okay? And then when we do it, this is a classic mistake that people make for impacts at the end. As they come to do oitsuki, they start to turn. Okay, we don't. From here for do oitsuki, I come in. The foot's just about to come down, and what's built up here? This. So I'm staying square, 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 square. This hand's guard, knock things down in the way. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I'm just about to come down. This hip now whips, and then this comes in. Okay, linked in with the kick shocks. So if I've got an opponent just in front, and I still think oitsuki will work, okay, I don't move the front foot. I'm just going to simply go over the top of it. So I'll just kick shock and go over the top. If I want to go distance, that front foot slips, then over the top. Any questions? David.
Sorry, Sensei, I think a few people are dropping off because we're 15 minutes over time. But
oh, are we?
but you know, we're certainly not complaining.
I've only started.
Keep on going.
I've just started. I'm just getting going. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Sensei, please feel free to kind of continue, but obviously at some point we're going to have to stop. But
yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I'm not conscious of the time at all. So well, let's do a Q&A, and then I'll fill it in with any technique or anything that, I'm sorry, I meant to do more on the pads and the focus mix, guys, so that you can see, what I want you to see is the continuity of the double hip. It's not a one-off technique, it feeds into everything. So we might be doing, let's say we're doing lead hand, I'm rolling the lead hand in, and then as this is hitting here, this hip's going again. And I'm going to throw a hook in, this hip's going again. And at the same time I do the hook, it will hit a kick shot for the roundhouse coming in. Counter rotating with the top hand as we kick with that lead. So I'm staying fairly upright, square, come down this hand. Because what you see is a lot of people, they lean back, they do a left roundhouse. This hand needs a bus ticket to now get back to the target, to the opponent. Okay? So kicking should be in a position where you can defend, you square, you're here, square, this turns in, turn this in, and then I'm coming down on top or whatever. Excuse me a second. Yeah, so any questions, guys?
Yeah, Peter Sensei.
Yeah.
When you're throwing these techniques, do they necessarily have to be fast? Because I've seen like sustainment and stuff like that when they throw these, they almost look slow motion, but you end up not registering it and blocking. Do you use that kind of thought within the way you punch as well?
Oh, no, absolutely. No, well, I mean, don't forget, I had, which I missed out in the first bit of the CV. So I spent 8 years on one door in Manchester, working a door in Manchester for 8 years. And for 6 of those years, it was 4 nights a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then moved it down to 2 nights. And in the 80s, that was from 70 to 78. And then from the early 80s, I had a chain of clubs and pubs in Manchester and Salford, and a time when there was huge amounts of problems. And what you find is, just we move on to the practical side of things. The classic thing, you have to think about this in some depth when we finish this. Action beats reaction. At touching distance, where the person can touch you with no body movement, action beats reaction. And we can prove that every single time, even with skilled people. And even if you know it's coming, you won't be able to block it. Action will beat reaction. So preemption is what you want. But one of the issues, absolutely opposite to that point you made, is if you do something really sharp, what you're doing is you're innovating a twitch response. You're innovating a startle response that we all have, like the stone coming to the car windscreen. So when you twitch, the person will go like this. But if you do it slowly, in slow motion, they actually just look at it. Because what happens is it's cognitive. They actually think about what's happening. So sometimes when I used to have to strike, I wouldn't do it fast because I just want to get the weight in slowly. I want my body weight. I don't want to make it a twitch. And people just actually look at you while you do it. It's a really weird thing. So that speed can sometimes innovate a startle response. You see it in sparring all the time. Somebody's really fast, the other person just reacts. You do it slowly, they just look at it. Okay, so mix things up when you're sparring. We do lots of sparring.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did that answer the point, by the way? Was that?
It certainly did, definitely.
Right, okay, yeah, so startle response, just think about that. And then, you know, you can mix things up. So.
Thank you.
Anything else, guys?
Just hope I'll get down to your dojo when lockdown's all over, Peter Sensei.
Yeah, yeah, you'll enjoy it. There's this today is literally tip of the iceberg. How we put everything together. You know, what we bring in, how we put it together. Let me just talk about fitness. I train 6 days a week. 2 of those are heavy martial arts sessions. The other 4 are CV and weights. Okay? And one of the things you want to study when it comes to fitness is that there's some great work done by a professor. He's a Texan, but he's in university in Norway. Some of you might know him. It's Stephen Seiler, S-E-I-L-E-R. And he talks about zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. Zone 1 being aerobic, Zone 2 being that point where you're in that anaerobic threshold, and zone 3 is where the blood lactate has taken over and shuts you down. And for endurance athletes, you've now got a training regime called polarization. For those of you who are cyclists or anything that's needing that endurance, they're doing 80% in zone 1, pretty much nothing in zone 2, and 20% in zone 3. Okay, so I was training this morning in a different gym, Total Fitness. It's one of the multi-gyms in the UK. And I was forcing myself to stay in zone 1, which they call the guilty zone. And it's murder for me, because I was determined to do 30 minutes on the running machine, just walking uphill and not moving out of zone 1. But I feel guilty that I'm not working hard. But in zone 1, what we're building up is more mitochondria, which are the energy cells for the muscles. We spend a lot of time doing muscular endurance. It's not so much strength, just muscular endurance. So the muscles will fuel themselves with ATP, refuel really quickly. We can keep things going for a long time. Then we'll do, and most of our stuff we'll actually be doing in zone 2, strangely, and occasionally in zone 3. So we have an exercise called 4 corners, which you'll very much enjoy, guys, when you get over here. You'll love it. The 4 corners is just 15 seconds of a drill, different drills, just hands in each corner, and you've got 5 seconds to and it's in these squares here. It's 15 seconds, 5 seconds to the next one, 15 seconds, and everybody falls over at the end of it. Right? You either fall over or you die on your feet. So that's just a minute with even 5 seconds in between. That's zone 3 training, okay, which we'll throw in as well. Most of ours will be 2-minute drills or a drill up here and back down again. So we're pretty much in that zone 2. But it's interesting. We can bring that more in when you're here, guys. Just show you those. Any questions?
I have one that's maybe more of a comment and question.
Yeah.
Just position for the punch with the heel up,
Yeah.
and body lean. That's exactly the same posture you have when you land in walking. That toe off propulsion for the back foot stops a heavy braking effect, so it stops the bounce back off the floor when you're walking, and you end up with what looks like a lean, but that's to minimise the effect of your front foot driving you back. So you're in, it's just natural walking.
Yeah, and of course it's a sprint. I learned many years ago to sprint on the balls of my feet, because that front foot, exactly the same point, but move it to running. If you are not over that front foot, and I know we're dealing with the front foot now, not the back foot, but principle's the same. When we walk, we don't walk with a flat foot at the back. We push off that heel. It's natural if we want to go forward. If we think about going forward, what's going to help us? But when you're thinking about sprinting, what you don't want is that retardation of the heel coming down first and the body not being over that leg when you come down. So sprinters, you watch all sprinters, they're sprinting on the balls of the feet and the body is over that foot, which is pretty much where we are when we get to that punch. Okay, we're over that. And my heel is just about being forced up on the front leg. And if I wanted to, I can let that translate going forward, carry on with other techniques, blast it through. Or if I want, I'm conscious I might need to come back on it. So then I'll come back on a solid stance. Proper Zenkutsu. Anything else?
Sensei, when you're talking about the training zones, are you doing that all based on heart rate?
Yeah, it's obviously the training, the zones are based on a number of things: blood lactate, VO2, and heart rate. But of course, heart rate is probably the most variable for individuals. So if you think about the training zones and you think about it for different types of athletes. So if you think about VO2 max and you look at, let's say, international road bike racers, their VO2 max is up to 85 to 90. Sprinters, Olympic 100-meter sprinters, their VO2 max is about 45. It's crap. They've got they don't need it. Theirs is, it's over before they need to be having, they're not converting oxygen aerobically to fuel the system. Okay, they're used to being able to work at that high blood lactate level. 200 meters, pretty much the same. Probably no aerobic content in that. 400 meters, no, you will have some aerobic. So at 400 meters, you're starting aerobically, moves anaerobically. The last 25, 30 meters, 50 meters on 400, you're probably in zone 3 in that lactate, where your blood lactate is starting to take over and then shuts people down. So.
And when you're doing your training in the dojo, are your students doing it based on heart rate or perceived rate of exertion, or?
Yeah, we don't, for the average student, we're not testing anything like that. We're not testing heart rate or VO2 max. We want them to try and understand it. There's a fallacy about maximum heart rate, which is 220 minus your age. It's proven to be a complete fallacy. It was a piece of pseudo-scientific work that came out many, many years ago, that I think it happened on a slow news day and grabbed attention of people. And they've now sort of disputed that a maximum is not 220 minus your age. Okay, but our heart rate test is it still working at the end of a drill? Okay, is it, you know, is my heart still going to survive at the end of a drill? And so just no surprise, I'm 72. So as I say, this is my 57th year, but we're working to the same intensity on drills that we've always done. It's not changed, still maintaining that same high level of intensity, working anaerobically a lot. We still do lots of drills where we're working in that zone 1, we're working aerobically, but then we're moving it into that anaerobic arena. Okay. Yep.
So I think we've come to the end of the Q&A. If anybody else has got last 10 seconds, if you want to last question, then please go for it. No, well, then it only leaves for me to say, Peter Sensei, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. That was wonderful.
Yeah, I hope that was all right. Not quite what was planned, but I think we covered some key issues. So
that was amazing, and I'm sure. Well, I can see lots of people clapping. So yeah, thank you very much. That was fantastic.
Well, nice to see you all. Really great to have that link with all your people, Scott.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely my pleasure, and I hope that it's the first time, but it certainly most hopefully won't be the second.